Hi there everyone. During the hot sunny weather in May and June, Sharon and I enjoyed working in our garden and also relaxing in it. The plants and shrubs in the garden, and particularly the tubs, the pots and the hanging baskets, really suffered because of the fierce heat, and they needed a good watering every night because the hot sunshine had dried up any moisture during the day. One thing I didn't miss was cutting the grass. In fact, some of the grass went brown. I didn't miss cutting it every 6 or 7 days. But since the more unsettled weather started in mid-June, the mixture of rain and cloud, of sun and heat, has caused everything in the garden to grow rapidly, including the grass. So Sharon and I work in the garden, perhaps like you do. We plant, we water, we remove weeds, and we cut the grass. But God provides both the sunshine and the rain and the heat to make things grow. This got me thinking about how we grow as followers of Jesus, and in particular of how the church grows. And that was Paul's concern when he wrote to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 5 to 9. Paul says, "What after all is Apollos, and what is Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned each his task. I plant the seed, and Apollos waters it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labour. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building." Here Paul is helping the Corinthians to understand that they shouldn't follow people, men or women, and make them into some kind of personality. The Corinthian culture was obsessed with personalities, not that different from the culture that we live in today, and even some church cultures. Paul makes it clear that although the Corinthian church is indebted to men and women who have faithfully proclaimed the good news of the gospel, they in themselves are not more important than the message they proclaim or the God that they serve. The message they proclaimed was Christ and Him crucified. It tells us in 1 Corinthians 2:2. And Paul reminded the Christians in Corinth that they were servants of God and they had come to believe through the message that they shared with them in 1 Corinthians 3 verse 5. The word servant here carries with it the sense of Paul and Apollos being people who serve on behalf of a master, the Lord Jesus, and in his name, and in and through his authority and power. Paul and Apollos viewed themselves as people who served as co-workers, serving God in his work and in his world. One planted, the other watered. Both their roles were necessary. A planter and a waterer were needed, but they had distinct and different roles to fulfill, and each would be rewarded according to their work. This is a wonderful picture that Paul paints for us here. In verse 7, Paul says, "So neither they who plant nor they who water are anything, only God who makes things grow." This is good news, isn't it? God makes things grow. This is so important to our individual growth as followers of Jesus Christ and as a community of his people, the church here at DBC. We are to live for Christ, and as we do, we are to make Christ known to others. We are to see ourselves as servants of Christ first and foremost, serving in his name, under his authority and in his power. We all have different gifts, roles and functions and tasks to fulfill. We are to work together and we are to work with God, because we don't invite God to join us in our work. He invites us to join him in his work, in what he's doing. It is God who makes things grow, not us, not vision papers, programs, ministries, or buildings. All these have their place, but ultimately the growth comes from God. God bless you, everyone.